Hey y'all, it's Andrew Reed with the MushRune Cast. Well, I'm actually a guest of Mossy Creek Mushrooms, and then the MushRune Cast. But joined as always by my ever loverly wifey, who is decaffeinated today.
Yeah, I'm miserable. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try to be chipper.
Try to be chipper. And then, our other co-host, Contaminated Bag. Hey, Contaminated Bag. Hi, Andrew. How are you doing? I'm doing quite well, thank you. Man, he's so polite. Too bad we're going to have to throw him away after this. Well, all right then. Guys, we have got some cool stuff to go over today. I am, of course, as always, taking questions on contamination issues, particularly today. Let's please try to keep it on topic as much as possible, and that way, and when we get to the topic that you are interested in, we can do an entire episode on that as well. It is burning up. I don't know who turned the furnace on in East Tennessee, but wearing overalls may have been the wrong decision, as I am sweating in the studio. So, if I had known I was going to need to, ice down there, I would have done it already. Oh, dang it. Oh, I missed the face she was making.
Oh, gosh.
But, forgive my sweating. Andrew, the fat guy, is going to try to get through this as little sweatily as possible. So, oh, man. Hey, so Free Guy Fun Guy, I noticed. I can't see everybody's stuff. That's why Samantha is here to help. But Free Guy Fun Guy says, sick shirt, Andrew, poor wiferly. We'll do something a little unusual. I'm going to undress for you guys live.
Bound to go out.
Where are those super chats at? No, I'm just so this actually is Woolgast Mushrooms. Sienna Woolgast came and did a mentorship with us 3 weeks ago? No. I don't know. A while back. So that's enough
It's
of
not
my...
been that long ago.
That's enough of my bare chest. Though it is not my bare chest, I know.
But yeah, she was very kind and gifted us each a shirt, so that was awesome.
Well, and by each, we mean each one of the white-collar workers. Fat Maddie and Mike Myers out there. They're all out there jealous.
Moses said slower.
Slower.
Oh,
Boom, but I don't. Somebody said brown chicken, brown cow. Bow chicka wow wow. Brown chicken, brown cow. I like it. All right. If I knew this was the way to get attention, guys.
Wow.
Well, Samantha, what's on our agenda today?
Well, contamination, yes, but...
Are you talking into the mic? Because I can't barely hear you. Try now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I said, well, contamination, obviously, which you've already said. Other than that, just kind of asking some questions and answering those, and just sort of whatever comes up on our plate.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Magic Andrew, like Magic Mike. I like it. Magic Mike. MYC. I could be Magic Mike. Oh my gosh, I'm going to start. No one start that YouTube channel before I get a chance to.
You better buy the domain now.
All right. Well, now that we've been completely derailed, I tried to get back on task, and you guys just keep taking me off task. So let's talk contamination.
It's the colorful shirt, and you've gone wild.
It's true. I've never felt so alive. You can ask Samantha, I'm always wear earth tones and stone color and black. And part of that's because I'm fat, and I know that stuff's a little slimming. But the other side of that is, I'm just so cheery on the inside that I can't wear color on the outside. But now I'm being so magnified. It's just double the excitement.
Matches your headphones.
Oh, look at that, it does. Everything's reversed.
And your pins and your bib.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of comments on, this is what scientists look like. This is all biologists I know. Okay, let me put it this way. I was watching a show called Another Life on Netflix, and the biologists that they wake up wakes up and he gets dressed. And what does he look like? Oh, he's like long hair with a big beard and overalls and a t-shirt and sandals. Oh, I fit a stereotype. I fit a stereotype of the biologist. So, and something else I've noticed about a lot of biologists, and I mean, a lot of scientists in general, but biologists primarily, a lot of colorful pens to write on any surface. Well, all right. So anyways, real quick, I do want to make sure that we get to talk today about a contamination that's new to me over the past, I'd say, year to year and a half. It's only shown up since we moved into the warehouse. And so that's actually an interesting place to start, in that I have noticed most places have their own brew of contamination. So every time you move your op, you're actually coming into a whole new range of contaminants and their vectors. Vectors just means a way for contamination to get in. What was that?
A door closed.
Oh, our door?
I think it was the bathroom door.
Oh, cool. Would you do me a favor real quick? Would you refill that for me? Please, Jack's not around. Thank you. Cream, please. So every time we heard that. So every time you move to a new place, you end up having a new group of contaminations. Every environment has its organisms that it's living in, right? Its niches and everything filled. So we moved here and we came across, I'll just show you what it looks like. This, where is my finger? There we go. Oh, you guys shouldn't see my fingernail, but that's because they're ugly. But this is what we call it here. Let me see if I can't get to focus a little better. And that was not a child yelling, that was my dog. So we call it Mica-like. Mica-like looks to the untrained eye like regular mycelium, but I feel like most of you guys can see it this close up. You can see that it's not the cleanest looking mycelium. It's not what we would typically, it's not your typical strong mycelium that's traveling really in a linear fashion. So that being the case, it's got this powdery, chalky look to it. It's not, the good, clean mycelium. It doesn't smell good either. It doesn't smell terrible, but it doesn't smell that great. We call it Mica-like. I've never run across this contamination. I've never seen people really asking about this contamination. I'm hoping some of you guys have had some experience with it. Maybe you can tell me what your results were. How did you get rid of it? That kind of stuff. We don't see it a lot in the op. It's just like every now and then it'll take over a spawn bag. And then if we catch it in time, that's great. But if we're not, we will throw it in like 30 to 50 blocks and it'll sit on the shelf and it will do nothing. You'll cut it open and it'll just sit there and never fruit. Ever will it ever fruit. So Mica-like, obviously some sort of fungal culture. The person that we've hired does have contacts in all kinds of labs, so we're going to try to send it off to get identified. But it's kind of an ugly thing. It doesn't really, it's not a showstopper. Like I said, it just keeps showing up every now and then. So, the other side of that, of fungal stuff. Oh, crap, my cord's too short. Oh, that's okay, though. Hey, Tristan, sorry. Thank you. So we got a contaminant here. Looks to me like this is probably Trichoderma. Could be penicillin, but the deep dark green looks to me more like Trichoderma. Now, what's interesting to me is by the way this contamination has shown up on the block, you can see, this block did not get mixed in well enough, so the bottom didn't grow in. But you can see that it's on a far corner, and it's in one area in particular. This tells me a couple of things. One of them is the cook was good. The cook was good, because otherwise you would see contamination right about the same time that you're seeing your spawn run. Now, another thing this is telling me is that the spawn was probably good. Why? Because if the spawn was bad and you mix the spawn all up in the bag, then you're spreading the contamination too, and you should see contamination pretty much everywhere. This case, you're only seeing it on a corner, and it's on the top, and it's going down. Where is that? There we go. So weird to me to have to do this in reverse. But it's going down. That tells me that this is likely a failed filter patch. Now, I don't know if there would be a visible hole if we went through the microscope and try to look at this filter patch. But, I mean, the truth is, no filter is perfect. All filters fail occasionally. The question is, you know, do they do the job well enough? I see that we got a couple of questions, so I'll hit those as well. But, so this Mica-like, when we go back to this real quick, this is throughout the entire bag. This whole thing is completely Mica-like. That tells me that in that grain spawn, it was likely either the culture or the cook that went bad in that. And because it spread across the entire thing, I'm going to guess it was the cook. Now, someone says, question for you, Justin. When it comes to the ultrasonic mister and the bin it would lay in, how often do you clean the mister in the tub? Also, if not clean, how much would that affect your grow room? If not cleaned, it'll affect your grow room big time. That is a huge vector for contamination. Usually when people tell me they're having blotch issues, I tell them immediately, go clean your humidifier. Because in particular with the ultrasonics, that they are ultrasonics. They're vibrating at a frequency that literally atomizes the water, right? When that water gets atomized, you can put things in your humidifier, certain chemicals and things, and they will atomize with that water as well. It will carry, like neem oil, I think people use, that kind of stuff. Always research stuff before just doing it. So don't just hear me say neem oil goes in the ultrasonic humidifier and then you do that. Don't do that. Just always research stuff. I've never used neem oil. I've never had the need to. That said, your humidifier is a strong vector. It's a place that is usually warm from the ultrasonic humidifier, constant fresh water. If you're not filtering everything out and using RO water, then you have solid, you have water soluble nutrients, as well as, excuse me, of course, all that water, which is what life needs. It's what plants crave. So you got to clean it all the time. I clean it once a week. We put a UV filter in ours. I don't clean it personally. Well, my employees do now, but when I did it personally, cleaned it every week. You break everything down. We bleach it. We vacuum all the water out. We bleach spray that. We run fresh water in it, vacuum it back out, and make sure everything's scrubbed down, cleaned. We have videos on how to clean this stuff, but we'll do a new video for the humidifiers that we currently have so that you guys can see the updated process with how the employees are doing it. The UV lights help a ton. So get you a little stick, submersible UV light. Make sure that you cannot see that light. Always research UV because I've seen people damage their eyes doing it. So I don't want you getting hurt. But that helps a lot. Bill, about the contamination, we're talking contamination on anything. I'm happy to talk it through with you guys on anything that you want. The best examples I can show over here would be from Agar or grain spawn or a fruiting block. I do have a fruiting block here I want to show you guys as well. Similar to the one we had before. And then, of course, that Mica-like, which was already under camera, which looks sort of like mycelium, but is not. That helps, Andrew's shirt looks like a Rainbow Kitten surprise album cover. Speaking of Myco Myers, what's up, Myco? Did you find another contaminant for me? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, this will be a good one. Thank you. Thank you very much, Myco. How about that? Myco's so diligent. Huh? All right. Which substrates have you tried that had the most contamination versus the sub that generally has the least. So I'll say that soy is kind of dirty. Like soy has been, but soy's a supplement, not a substrate so much. I mean, I know it goes in, but so, and with it being 50%, it's hardly a supplement at this point. But soy is one of the dirtiest ones I've come across. I think the single dirtiest substrate that I have ever come across is coffee grounds. They must be sterilized. Pasteurization just isn't enough to work with used coffee grounds. So that's probably it. The least would be probably the least is hardwood, but straw is also a self-selective substrate. So straw and hardwood would be in the running for the least contaminant prone, but anytime you add a supplement, you're going to increase the chances of contamination. So you can grow on pasteurized straw and sawdust easy. It doesn't even have to be that good of a pasteurization. You can fail at it and still grow a decent amount of mushrooms. But the moment you supplement and want to actually get good crop sizes, you have to really pasteurize. You have to really have your pasteurization game down, or just straight up sterilize. So. Yeah, Justin, the ultrasonic mister can definitely cause a bacteria that's not normally airborne to be airborne, for sure. Plant Plasma says, hey, Mossy, do your will high controllers crap out above 90%? Mine is seemingly super inaccurate. It seems like they weren't made for super high humidity. I don't remember what the names of ours are. If it's some of the ones that come with the House of Hydro kits, yeah, they're kind of difficult. Which it's why 90% is like my top out. I don't do anything beyond that. After that, my bottoming out is my low end is 65%. If you give them a good dry out period and then a good wet period, they don't seem to be as inaccurate as they do if you're just trying to go 90% all the time. That said, your sensor may be what's crapped out. The sensors are crap. I liked the tiny little black, flat black sensors better than I liked the caged ones that they've been sending out recently. The little flat black ones were nice when they were freaking out or whatever. You could just go up there and grab them between your fingers and just rub them and go wash your hands, and then it seemed like it worked perfectly. So that was kind of an issue. That high of a humidity at 90% all the time will definitely give you contamination issues. Refill it for your ain't that good. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, Samantha went to go take care of it. Though she's been gone long enough, I think she's having to actually make me coffee, which I feel kind of bad about now. How many contaminants and bugs live in a big, bushy beard, and how do you limit it in a lab or working near spawn or substrate? So, a lot. I mean, they've done studies. You can, if you've got a beard, you can swab it. Probably not as gross as a lot of people think, and probably worse than some other people think. You can wear a beard net if you're that worried about it. I don't. When I'm working, my hands are out here. They're not next to the beard. I mean, your breath is far worse than a beard. Beards aren't going to just leap out and jump on there. So, you know, what I do is I work at the table. I control my breathing when I'm working. I like to look down. I don't breathe out through my mouth. I breathe out through my nose. And that hits here. As HEPA filtered air is coming this way, it directs my breath down. It should, and there's the gap at the table, which you can't see where you're at right now. But the gap at the table, if I'm breathing down, and I like to breathe slow. If people are uncomfortable with that kind of stuff, they should just wear a mask if you don't want to have to control your breath. If I open a dish, I hold my breath. As soon as my dish is closed, I go, breathe out, down. So I'm looking down anyways. That's where I'm working. Don't sing in the lab. If you listen to music and you have a hard time not singing to it, wear a mask. Don't sing in the lab. And then just keep working. Everybody likes to give me crap about the beard, and I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. Mask doesn't work. I can pass a seal test with a respirator, even with the beard. People say you can't. That's BS. It may be slightly less effective, but a slightly less effective filter is still way more effective than no filter. People have had beards for a very long time and have been doing microbiology. It's the whole space age microbiology thing that's got people thinking that body hair is so terrible. It's not. Just be human and be you and do your work. All right. I have had a similar inlines being grain jar. Okay, you're talking about the Mica-like. Yeah, it seems to show up a lot more with Hericiums, I've noticed. You can put a UVC bulb in your humidifier. Absolutely, Lars. What's up, Cameron? I have a disgusting picture I took from my humidifier. I gave it its own name, Humidifier Snot. Yeah, that's called, that's basically just biosludge. It's just biosludge. We'll just call it that. It's just a kind of snotty biomass. Nice, I'm doing it in the time frame you described. Thanks. Absolutely, Justin. I'm glad I could help. Rosalind, how do you determine time of steam on fruiting blocks? For instance, a pressure cooker for fruiting bags is about 2.5 hours, but is there a formula for a larger batch, like for a 55-gallon container? Yes. I think it's called the Mollier diagram. Mollier. Let me see if I can find it real quick. All right, I'm pulling it up, but I'm going to have to build an asset real quick to show you what I'm talking about. Water steam. Well, you know what? I'm not going to look it up right this second. There are absolutely some formulas for that. The way I worked it out was I took a guess, a best estimate, and I cooked some blocks for that long, and then if they failed, I cooked more. And I just kept testing it and testing it. So what I did actually was we went way overboard. We cooked for 36 hours. That worked perfectly. Then we cooked for 30 hours, and that worked perfectly. And then we cooked for 28, and then we cooked for 26, and then we went down to 24, and then we went down to 20 hours. And I think at 18 we saw a decent rate of failure. At 18 for 1 full ton of substrate cooked in a 300-gallon trough. With that, we then went to, we were like, okay, at 18, I would rather be sure. So we didn't just go back to the last point of success, which was 20. We went all the way to 24 hours, and we do our cooks at 24 hours just because of trial and error. Once we've had that, we've had very little issue. But if you go to Paul Stamets' book, Growing Gourmet and Medicinal Mushrooms, his book from the 80s, it absolutely has like diagrams in it. In fact, you're talking about pasteurization. Pasteurization temps. Graph. Okay, here we go. Now, do the window capture. And there we go. Now, you can see that they've got different ones here for chicken, vid steak, meat, milk, fruit juice. Maybe we just add the word, oh my goodness, mushrooms. If I can type, I have a hard time typing and thinking. Now, here we go. You got temp and your target temp. Oh, that's the wrong thing anyways. This is what I get for trying to show you something in real time. Substrate temperatures, that's not what we're after as well. Well, screw it. We'll just go back to what we were doing. The basically just trial and error is the way I do it. You can get it from Paul Stamets' book. There's other ways to find it. I can definitely find you something. We can do a whole topic on it later. Just right now, I'm not going to be able to get it for you in live without like really making this a very boring live stream. So I'm going to skip that part, but trial and error, I've already explained. Life is great. You're great. Well, thank you, Haste. I appreciate it. Made it. I'm not a morning person. Oh, Aussie time. Gotcha. So I've actually thought about pushing my Wednesday ones back to like 5:30 and then doing it till about 6:37. Does mean my kids will have to kind of like just be bored, but you know, that's all right. I have access to soft yellow pine in huge amounts from work. Any I missed? And are you having to make the coffee? If I had known that, I wouldn't have sent you. Any idea how Phoenix Oyster will do on what, babe?
This way I can get coffee because I wouldn't do it for myself, but I'll do it for you.
Well, that sounds good. If serving me helps you serve you, then that is the best serving of all. John, yeah, Phoenix will grow on pine. Absolutely. Especially pellets. Pellets are absolutely great. So I have a mist maker, single, the smaller one. It'll be in my small fruiting chamber that's 7 feet tall, 5x6 chamber that I've made myself. Would that create enough humidity, or should I get an extra one? Honestly, at that size, I mean, I would get like a 3 to 6 head. Samantha's getting the dogs riled up. A 3 to 6 head mister. A single one, it's going to run a lot, especially if you're pulling fresh air through. And if you're pulling fresh air through, you're going to burn yours out. So you at least need to get a backup one. Gosh, follow with me. Want an opinion if you think I can profit with Phoenix Oyster on soft yellow pine shavings I get for free. So I don't know about yellow pine. I've grown on white pine from the pine shavings. That said, I would imagine it's similar. You're just going to have to run an experiment and try and then see how much you get off of it. Also curious to get any thoughts on viability of cold water lime pasteurization. Trials indicate it seems to work well enough. I really dislike lime pasteurization. That's mostly personal experience with it, but I will tell you that if you're up north, you know, if you're up north somewhere, it's more successful than if you're down south. If you live in the desert, it's usually more successful than it is if you live in the southeast. So southeast, Pacific Northwest tend to be pretty wet with large amounts of bioload in the air. I'm talking mold spores, bacterial endospores, et cetera, et cetera. So sorry, I saw somebody talking about the Moliere again, and it got me going. Which is why Samantha usually helps here. But cold water pasteurization always works until it doesn't. Once it works, or once it stops working, it's disastrous. I've seen people hurt themselves by having their hands, like the skin on their hands, eaten away until their hands are raw. Doc Holliday is the one that really pushed that with Aloha Medicinals. Doc Holliday's not really in business anymore. There's a good reason for that. So, I mean, I'm sure he's around somewhere pushing his same old stuff. But there's a reason why most people use heat. That's because heat is just more effective. That said, I mean, try it. And if it works for you, then just keep doing it. And don't listen to what I have to say on that one. Is it slime mold? No, so the slimy stuff in the your humidifier reservoir, it's not a slime mold. Slime molds are not actually molds. They are amoebas? It'll tell me. Oh, great oracle. What are slime molds? Eukaryotic organisms. And it's not going to tell me which ones, but so basically they're single cell organisms. They form together, basically mouth to anus, to form large networks of a multicellular organism. That multicellular organism is how they swap DNA. They do collect some food. They do pass things around, do protoplasm exchange, et cetera, et cetera. So it's absolutely a slime, but it's not a mold. The stuff you find in your humidifier is an active biofilm. Biofilm was the word I was looking for, not bio slime or bio whatever, but it's a biofilm. Biofilms are usually layers of unicellular organisms, single cell organisms that are growing, and they've just continued to grow until they're in a mat. And in aqueous environment, water environments, they They coat pretty much any surface. You've been to mountain creeks, and as you're walking around, you get on those rocks and they just slip. That's a biofilm. Biofilm can be incredibly slippery, like 10 times more slick than ice. You get in on the bottom of your grow rooms if you're not cleaning your grow rooms well enough. And I have busted my ass in biofilm before. It is not fun, and it can smell pretty bad. So biofilms are common. It's usually just bacteria. So zoological slime. I like that. But that's maybe that's what it's called. I don't know. I've never heard it called that, but I like it. With a 55-gallon pasteurizer, it's best to get indicator strips to verify your insulated blocks reach proper temps. That's true. You got to get pasteurization strips, though, and I don't know exactly where to find those. It is not sterilization strips that you use. If my substrates have contamination, can I cook them and use again? I would not. So, Powell, sorry if I said your name wrong. When you are, when you have mold in a bag, okay? So let's go back to this fella here. When you have mold in a bag, you don't just, ooh, man, I can actually smell the Trichoderma. That's definitely Trichoderma. This is not just an organism, right? Neither is the oysters. It's an organism plus its byproducts, and the substrates, of course. But the byproducts, if you see here, when I pull this away, this plastic still has mold spores on it. Okay? It's not just producing mold spores, it's producing metabolites. Most likely right here where it's coming in contact with the king oyster here, it is most likely producing defensive enzymes, and so is the king oyster. If you cook this, those enzymes don't go away. The metabolites don't go away. They just get cooked. So if you had a significant enough contamination, this maybe you could salvage, but I mean at this point you could still, I'm still going to fruit this king oyster on this side. So I'm still not going to lose anything. But if this was significantly contaminated, you're talking about a significant amount of, what does mold produce really as a defensive enzyme? Think about this. What is the biggest competitor with mold? Fungi, other fungi. These guys produce a cocktail of antifungals. You kill the organism, but the antifungals are still left in here, meaning that Trichoderma probably has a better chance of inoculating this block than the other stuff that you had. Now that said, I do want to run some experiments because Trichoderma in particular is grown as a fertilizer for people's gardens, field crops, and things like that, mainly because it produces antifungals, and they want to protect their plant roots from funguses, from root rot. So Trichoderma is actually a great way of going into your garden. That said, I have noticed that when bags like this of oyster are partially contaminated with Trichoderma, if I wait, this will eventually eat this back. And when it does, when it beats this back and gains that territory, my oysters do seem like they produce way better. And there's some experimentation I want to do there. I haven't done it. I want to do some breeding experimentation from there. I want to do some clonal experimentation from there. I would love to see this thing fight this off, fruit, clone that fruit, and then see if that vigor is still there, or if it was literally some sort of enzyme or something the Trichoderma was leaving behind. Perhaps even a nutrient like nitrogen or some other suchness. So my answer is no, typically you can't. Now, on that same kind of subject, here's an interesting one. It's another king oyster. We're running a lot of kings right now. But, again, not shaken well enough to distribute everything to the bottom. But there is a black mold, and it's kind of, yeah, you guys can see that. I can see that on the camera, so you guys should be able to see it. You can see that whole section of black. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see this mess, but this bag had a blowout right here. When it had a blowout, because unicorns' bags have all of a sudden just gone to crap sometimes. But when we had this, we had to push the substrate back, get it back here, tape it, and then hope for the best. Obviously, it did not go for the best. So you can't always save those blown out bags. And blown out bags do cost money. That bag still cost me $5 to make, just like the other bag sitting next to it. And one of those will fruit and one of those probably will not. So contamination, controlling it is very important. And blown out bags are no joke. Alan says, ooh, snakeheads. Hi, not a question. No, not a question. Thank you very much, Alan. I appreciate that. Didn't realize that it wasn't a question to begin with. Well, probably not a double cook degrades the sub, but it could be possible. I will say that I don't have a problem with degrading the sub, actually. You might lose a little bit of biomass yield. You might lose, oh my gosh, bioefficiency, good lord, on the back end of the bag, on the fruiting block, like on its flushes. But what I've noticed is that with stuff that's easier to digest, a lot of strains actually produce heavier flushes up front. Hence why I'm using straw. Straw has less lignin in it and therefore breaks down much quicker. Interestingly enough, if you're going for biofuels and you want to grow out biofuels, oyster mushrooms grown on a substrate for 60 days, I think is what it was, reduces lignin content by 40%. And in straw, where you already have less of that, you can take your spent blocks and probably ferment them for alcohol biofuels. So that's an interesting idea to go with. Is the bottom layer of the tank colder than the upper? If you're talking about my pasteurization chamber, or are you talking about our humidifier reservoir? A humidifier reservoir, as far as I know, no, it's not, because our water is constantly refilling slightly, and the humidifier is constantly working, keeps it mixed up pretty well. With our pasteurization, no, I haven't. In fact, steam usually goes up, and we've got it covered with plastic, so then the steam has to go back down, and it exits out some vent holes in the bottom of the chamber, so it forces itself through pressure to push the hot air down. Yeah, absolutely, Rosalind. I much prefer trial and error. It's so much more sure than, just anytime someone gives you formulas, use those formulas, but use those formulas as guides, not rules. So, all right. So, Caleb McKenzie. For a while, I had a fruiting tent in the same room as my lab. I know this is a big no-no, but it was the only space I had at the time. I deducted the exhaust outside. Could this have ruined my flow hood? I don't think it's going to have ruined your flow hood. You can tell if your flow hood's ruined by doing a quality control check, simply by, what do they call it, an air Petri test or something like that. Take your Petri dishes, sterile, and if you're worried about, like, if my flow hood's already messed up and I'm having a hard time getting clean agar, order some pre-poured plates, maybe like $1 a piece through what's his name? The boxer, Mike Tyson, or Midnight Mushroom Company, or I'm trying to think of who else sells pre-pours. Either way, get those pre-pours. You set it in front of your flow hood. Uncover one for a minute, uncover one for 5 minutes, uncover one for 10 minutes. Incubate them, seal them and incubate them, and let them sit. And you can even, like, if you've got a flow hood that's 4 feet long, you can do from left to right, which I guess is opposite for you guys, but from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can have your 1 minute test, then you do your 5 and your 10, and you can even see if there are specific channels where your filter has failed. For the most part, that's probably not going to have ruined your filter, especially if you pre-filtered your HEPA. We use Allergen, an N95 filter, as a pre-filter for our HEPA filters. And so I've been using one HEPA filter for 13 years now. And it's the one that's in our production lab. It's still producing clean work. So I think you'll be all right, but just check it. You can also check its airflow. Like if it's plugged up and not flowing, do what's called a lighter test. And a lighter test is you'll take a Bic lighter, you will strike it right here at the edge of the table, right? when you do that, you should be able to light it at the edge of the table, or you can light it outside, bring it in. Edge of the table should just barely be blowing your lighter at all. Just kind of be like, the flame will just kind of look like that. As you get closer to the HEPA filter, when you get to your work area is ideally going to be where the flame is bent at an almost 90-degree angle. Okay? Then once you get within 2 to 3 inches of your filter face, it should should blow out the lighter. That's called a lighter test. It's a good way to check airflow, good low-tech way to do it. What should an ALC culture jar smell like after, say, a month with contamination and without? So without contamination, it should smell sweet, but like sweet and fungally. Should have a fungal smell to it. If it's contaminated, it's going to depend on what it's contaminated with. Molds usually stink to high heaven, and certain bacteria smell like poop. It's gross. It is a joy when your liquid culture is contaminated by yeast instead, because then it just smells like beer, especially if you're using malt extract. Now, I had 2 washed yesterday. My first time really ever opening a jar and smelled inside. Well, I mean, yeah, your nose is going to know. If it smells, it won't necessarily smell delicious, but it'll smell good and clean if it's a clean one. So, I agree, Ian. Lime pasteurization is my least favorite. Say that lime pasteurization is more effective than heat pasteurization for straw. I don't know who they is, Oliver, that said that, but I have not found that to be true at all. Thank you, R. Slicker. I like your name. It is a nice shirt. It's Sienna Woolgast. It's Woolgast Mushroom Farms. So she came and did a mentorship with us and gifted me and Jack and Samantha with a shirt. We'll see. Hello? Oh, it's coffee. Oh. I was trying to get Jack to come in here and show his shirt.
He offered to open the door for me.
Thank you, baby.
Should have said yes.
Isn't that nice? My own coffee service. All right, so I just started Cordyceps and bought it from terrestrial fungi, and it started to turn yellowish-orange. When would you say the best time to introduce light is? I don't know. USA Cordyceps, Con Park, is going to be the guy to look at his YouTube channel. He may have some advice on there. Terrestrial fungi may also have some. William Padilla Brown has a Cordyceps handbook. I'll be honest, I'm not as impressed with William's work as I once was on the Cordyceps. I'm more Con Park and Ryan Paul Gates of Terrestrial Fungi have really got that stuff down. Come on, Jack. Check us out. See? Right there. There you go. Look at that. Yeah, when was Sienna here?
3 weeks ago.
Okay, it was 3 weeks ago.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
We had fun.
Yeah, we
had a
did.
lot of fun,
Did you call her yet to let her know she needs to check in on the stream? Oh, well, we're talking about her and she's not even here to suck up to.
I'll give her a call. I'll tell her to go check it out.
Yeah, please do. Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
So, Penny, I'm not sure. Oh, wrong camera. There we go. See, she's even got a Woolgast shirt. Woolgast. It's a good German name. So I would think Ryan Paul Gates has got some advice on there somewhere about when to do it or not, but USA Cordyceps might as well. And that combination of Ryan Paul Gates and Con Park, they are going to be they're already making waves in Cordyceps, but between them and Appalachian Gold, I think you're going to see some real movement in the Cordyceps world very, very soon. So, let's see. John says, I did my trials with lime in Washington, borderline desert area in Alabama now. I have a 55-gallon Bubba barrel I can use. Yeah, absolutely, John. People have tried lime pasteurization here in the South a lot. The only people I've ever seen get away with it are people who live way up in the mountains where it's cool. When you're in Alabama, so as hot as it gets and miserable as it gets here in the summertime, where you guys are at, you're going to have such a huge bioload in your air. Even heat pasteurization is probably going to fail you some. Josh Rocket of Rocket City Mushrooms, I don't know what he's doing right now. I think his son took over. They are in like Huntsville area, but they have like during the summer it gets rough. And it gets rough for everybody almost in the South. So it's just like becomes your money and your yields going down in the summertime. So.
And please, please, for the love of your hands, wear gloves.
Yes. We've seen too many people. This is what I'm
Did
saying.
you go over that?
I did.
Okay.
Well,
that worried me so
I
much.
didn't go over wearing gloves per se, but I did say that we've seen people have their hands chewed up.
Yeah.
So what was it, Jenna from the Gnomestead, whose hands were the first ones we had seen with the lime, just like.
And she was tossing it in with the straw as it was cooling. Back, kind of the way we first started as well was you would cook your straw and pasteurize it, and then lay it on a table and let it cool long enough to where you could put the spawn and spread it out, and then she would sprinkle the lime in with it and then toss it all by hand. No gloves, no nothing. Like, it was just, and her poor hands were just, her fingernails were eaten up. It was awful.
Yeah. And you want to be really careful of this stuff. Always be researching how something that you're bringing into your op could be dangerous, because we saw a guy burn his eyes out with UV light because he thought he could work. He either forgot to turn it off or he thought he could work at the table with UV. So, okay, so, man, I've barely gone over contamination. We're getting a lot, it seems like a lot of people want to just do like a Q&A. We did go over it a little bit though. I really want to go over more contamination, but
Do it.
I see questions. Oh, then I'm gonna
I
let
can
you.
ask you while you do it.
That sounds good.
And then you can talk over it and create more contamination.
Damn straight. Speaking of, I'm gonna bring that over into this third camera here.
Did you show them some of the plates that you did last time
No, but I will now.
while talking over them? I was surprised a lot of those came out clean.
Yeah, I'll do those right now.
Penny said, "Don't forget to push the like button."
Yes,
That's very
don't
kind,
forget-
Penny.
yes.
Thank you.
Don't forget that. Who said that?
Penny Pack.
Penny Pack. All right. So, here you go. That was that chicken of the woods that Ben found. Obviously very contaminated. And here was the one that we pulled from. And as you can see, very contaminated. We have... Oh, there we go. Maybe people can hear me now. Okay. Very contaminated. And then you can see where it's already grown in some. Let's see if I can... Oh, that is as far as I can zoom in. So, that is already starting to heal in those holes. Now, that same chicken of the woods is right here. And you can see, I hope, that these are not contaminated, even though I talked over them the whole time.
And it was an open air transfer.
It was, yep, open air. Open air, and I was talking while I was doing these with you guys, 2 weeks ago? The chicken of the woods is just now starting to grow. That is normal for chicken of the woods. To show you an example of something a little quicker, I'm sure you guys may remember the turkey tail that we did. And remember I said how hard turkey tail was to do. So there's that one. And that is contaminated. That is all bacteria. And it's at each one of those cuts, which tells me, but it's not on this most right cut. That tells me that my scalpel had gotten dirty at some point during the transfer, because the cuts themselves were the source of contamination for that bacteria, it looks like. The next one is this one. And that is a heavy amount of bacterial contamination. That the turkey tail definitely grew in a ring right there. And you can see where it's eaten the food dye. But look, everywhere where that bacteria had not grown, or where that bacteria has grown and stopped the turkey tail, it is not showing the eaten food dye. And then this is the third one. So here we have a very, I wonder if I can, 1 second, guys. All right. As soon as I can get a little bit better lighting like that. Now, that is our turkey tail. That's one of the 3 plates that we did. I could very easily, I think, save this culture, the one that was contaminated with bacteria. But because of the fact that I have this one right here, I feel like we're just going to transfer from that. That's already ready, in my opinion, to go to liquid culture and culture slants. And this is the way we're doing things now, is we're going to the smaller dishes. We're going to go from smaller dishes to, just doing our agar work like this, collecting core samples with the needles, which is just the agar biopsy that I've done before. And then we will do wedges for our culture slants. But that plate right there, that's all the biomass I need. I could do 3 wedges, a couple of needle biopsies for liquid culture, and then I still have half a dish I can work with. So, and I could, of course, flip it underneath. You want to put a backlight to it, like a light going through it from the opposite direction to check for bacteria, but that's what I would do. This was a deep poured small plate. Worked out great. So it's that same turkey tail that I did just a couple weeks ago. These, we actually did a test of liquid culture as well. You can see that one has got bacteria all in it. So that one's bad. This one, obvious bacterial contamination. Oh. Now you guys should be able to see it at least in the reflection. Obvious growth on the surface, so another biofilm. And then this one, I'm actually starting to see some like bumpy growth. That bumpy growth usually to me is a good sign. But where the other 2 plates are contaminated, I believe that liquid culture was indeed contaminated. And that's what we were looking for, remember? So that's the plates that I had, Samantha, from last week. Are you have questions for me, or?
So Wolgas came up and said, "Love the shirt. Thanks for the shout out."
You're very welcome. Thank you for the shirt. And?
Sorry. So most people have just been kind of looking at you and sort of observing. So.
Did we lose the entire chat room whenever I started talking over there?
No. Now, Plant Plasma did ask, what's the lowest you let the humidity in the room get to? Well, it swings. We have it set. Andrew.
Yep. I'm going to put it on you so I can be a little bit less embarrassed.
So the humidity is set at what, 98%?
90. 90 is the high and 65 is the low.
But on like super dry days, we kind of go in and sort of manually.
We manually change it if it's stuck, but otherwise, if it's a dry day, the humidifier runs all the time, and if it's raining outside, then it won't run at all hardly.
Yeah. And then the lowest is what?
65%.
65. Okay.
Which in East Tennessee, it's hard to get. Sorry, in East Tennessee, it's hard to get like 65% because we're so humid here all the time. Yeah. So unless it's like fall, and fall when the leaves are drying out, that's about the only time that we get real dry periods. Maybe late summer, August and September, gets when the grass is starting to dry.
So I'm still kind of old school. I just go in and I look at the mushrooms and I observe them, and if it's too wet, sometimes I'll just unplug the humidifier. So it's just, I don't know. I'm really bad at numbers in that regard. Everything else I'm good at.
Well, you have.
But I don't do the settings on the grow room. Andrew does all of that.
Well, and that's in part because I'm very loosey goosey. Samantha's not. I'm like, whatever. It's fine. It's enough. So Samantha's very precise. And the problem with running a grow room is, if you want it to be really, really precise, you have to have really, really expensive equipment, which we don't have.
So really, to kind of let go, right? I went full bore with Andrew's suggestion, and that was to kind of just fill out the grow room sort of thing. So, and I've walked away since because it will drive me crazy if it's not perfect.
True that, yo.
But yeah.
3P says, when you just started your business, how much room were you working with? I have a big tent inside of a room, also a lab right now. Would I have to scale up? I don't. Depends on what if you're wanting to start a business. Not necessarily. Actually, there's a good video put out by Fresh from the Farm Fungi, Gary, where he talks about the different types of ways of getting into the mushroom business. If you're going to be forced to be really small, yeah, I mean, sell mushrooms for sure, but you can also, get on like Mushroom Growing or somewhere else and sell wedges and cultures. The problem is, don't undercut yourself. And if you're wanting to do fresh mushrooms, like don't undercut your prices. A lot of people think that, oh man, if I sell this, like there was the day of the $5 wedge. Do you remember that, Samantha?
I do remember that.
And like every culture you bought came with a free wedge of another strain. And that is so weird to me because all you need is that seed crystal of genetic information, and then you can grow 1 million pounds of mushrooms off of it, right?
I also remember the day of the, $500, $300 petri dish.
Yeah, so we went from like $500 a culture, $300. Maybe Paul Stamets was actually fairly affordable at a couple $100, Plus you had to sign a piece of paper you would never sell a strain, and then we went to the $5 wedge, and then you saw the $5 wedge fall out of favor because people can't make a business like that. You think, oh, it's so easy, but like, oh, this stuff costs so little to make. Yeah, it costs little to make, but you're gonna work that cheap. Your skills have got to up. You got to up your skills. You've got to up your game. You've got to invest in better and better equipment to grow as a business. You can't do that on $5 wedges. A lot of these guys who are doing like the $7 liquid cultures, I don't think they're going to be around forever because they're going to get tired of working for nothing. So, now that said, when I first started, we had 800 square feet. Not when I first started. When I first started, I had a 10 by 10 bedroom, a small tent by the window, and a lifetime plastic table as my workbench. And I didn't even have a pressure cooker at the time. I microwaved petri dishes. I microwaved Agar to sterilize it. So, you don't have to have much to start. That's what I started with, and then I started just growing mushrooms for ourselves and then selling the excess to other people and then going to the small farmers market and then the big ones. And then when we moved into the house that we live in now, we put that farm in the basement. We had, at our height in the basement, 2 grow rooms, lab, production area, and sterilization space. We had 800 square feet. And we were growing on a really good month, like our peak, we grew 900 pounds a week out of that. That was at peak production. Our average was much more like 600 to 700 pounds a week because summertime we'd go down to 300 or 400 a week sometimes because, that heat problem, that contamination problem. So,
do you remember hand spraying with a little water bottle?
Oh my gosh, yes. And we hand sprayed the entire grow room. So we had a little Martha tent. Yeah, and we thought we were balling when we bought a pesticide pump and you could just spray with the wand. Oh my gosh, that was crazy.
And then there for a while we got the pressure washer, and that was just, moving up from a handheld spray bottle
right
to the pesticide pump. It was just a clean one, brand new. You just, instead of putting pesticides in it, you just put water in it. And then going into the pressure washer, we would go in there like every 30 minutes to an hour, and we would just run the pressure washer for a little bit and kind of up and down the aisle and get it nice and humid in there.
Yep. Oh, the
so glad we don't do that anymore.
The good old bad days when we were just struggling up from poverty. So, So you don't have to have a lot. Like my first grow room, like you can produce a lot of mushrooms out of a little 10 by 10 grow room. Now,
so I think it's Beggarman.
Well, hold on real quick.
Oh, oops.
John Grady, any chance I can come up and meet you in person if I drive over from Northeast Alabama? Absolutely. Yeah, we have people come to the store all the time. And I'm here. And if you want to meet me, you got to set it up with Jack because I'm not always here all the time. I might be out doing something. So, but if I know you're coming, then I'll stick around. So, now Samantha, you go ahead.
So Beggarman is, he said that, or she, I'm not sure. Yeah, anyway.
Just move on.
I have a contaminated petri dish of oyster dove gray. On one side kept refrigerated. Should I let it get to room temp before I try to take a transfer to save it, or do it cold?
Okay, repeat that.
You might want to read it.
I can't find it. I can't find it, and I want you to read it, but...
All right, so a contaminated petri dish of oyster dove gray. On one side, kept refrigerated.
Mm-hmm.
Should I let it get to room temp before I try to take a transfer to save it, or do I do it cold?
I would just do it cold.
Why?
I mean, I would do it room temperature.
Why?
I don't know. I just would do it. I would. So if I'm going to pull it out of the fridge, I wouldn't.
Do one cold and do one at room temperature?
I wouldn't even worry. I mean, like, I don't. The mold is probably going to be less. The mold is probably going to be less active
When it's cold?
when it's cold, and so. But biologically active doesn't really matter if it's still slinging mold spores around. The biggest thing is just don't bump your dish.
If you go to room temperature, the plate's going to condensate, right?
Probably.
And then those
Which
drops
is what
will
my
drop.
answer, yeah. So my answer would be don't change the environment around a lot. Just pull it out of the fridge and do it.
Bionic said enjoying the contaminated views. Very useful for many.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. That's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk. So let's at least touch on this so I can make a highlight video later for this. So I can cut it out and make another video. But there's a couple of things I wanted to go over, which was if you see contamination on the top of your bags, you know that it's usually a failed filter patch. But if it's spread entirely throughout the substrate and your mycelium hasn't had much of a chance to take over, usually that means that your contamination was in your grain spawn. And if the mycelium is fighting but having a really hard time and everything else is contaminated, then you at least have what we would call like a bad cook. Your substrate would be bad. So basically, if it's spread around throughout the bag, then it was contaminated before you mixed it. And we mix when we put spawn in. And if it's contaminated just on the top surface, you know that it's usually a failed filter patch. If it's like a single mold spot on the side, you oftentimes might find like a micro abrasion or a puncture right there where a mold spore happened to get in.
So Nia has asked, how can you identify bacteria on your plate? Can you elaborate on what you're looking for exactly? It was difficult to see on the camera, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the camera figured out with that, because the problem is cameras pick up really highly reflective surfaces easily, and Agar is really highly reflective, as is the plastic dish. But so what I'm looking for is a couple of things, and it depends on what I've done. But generally, wet and greasy is yeast or bacteria. Mold will just have a different growth pattern. And the problem with trying to identify fungal growth patterns is that you have got to learn every fungus on its own. So an oyster looks different, and in fact, one strain will look very different from another strain in its mycelium and how they grow. Mold does the same thing. Mold is generally found by, you see it speckled throughout the plate. That's generally how you know it. It's tiny little circular colonies that start. If you're growing out from spores, though, you might have the same thing, right? That would be your mycelium. So mold's a little harder to find. Oftentimes people don't notice it until it sporulates. When it sporulates, it changes color. It produces green pins or black pins or little. The spores are what are causing the color phase. And if it's bacteria, you can oftentimes tell by taking a dish and holding it under a light and then reflecting that light back and forth. You'll see the bacterial colonies because they'll be highlighted around that reflection.
Now, I'll say I convinced Andrew to get a handheld microscope, and I saw an artist was going through all her pigments, and it was amazing to see the entirety of detail that it picked up. So we got it, and hopefully it'll be in the next few live streams or so.
Yeah, maybe we'll try that next week.
So I'm excited.
It's a completely different control setup, so I've got to figure out how to put it.
Yeah.
We might even be able to do an in-window, like do it by your head or something, or mine. We'll see.
Well,
What else we got? Oh gosh, we're already at time, guys. All right, run me through some quick rapid fire stuff if you can, and we'll close it out with some rapid fire questions, guys. This has flown by.
someone said you must be a Virgo.
I'm not. I'm a Taurus.
Are you talking about me?
Or are you talking about Samantha?
I don't
So,
know what I am. Don't ask me that question.
People have read the charts on me. I don't really know how I feel about astrology, but people have read my charts. What was it, Samantha? I was like, in all my houses, I was like Taurus, Capricorn, Taurus, or something like that. I mean, it was just something. I am incredibly Taurus. So, taurine. That's a good guess.
So, plant plasma. Can you guys talk about pricing you get in your local area, restaurant per pound prices for oyster, lion's mane versus farmer's market?
Restaurants versus farmers market. So oysters, $8 a pound to restaurants. We don't actually sell by the pound, so we do $80 a case. It's approximately a 10-pound case. Because we grow so many different species, they might have a 12-pound case or an 8-pound case. Rarely a 6-pound case, but that's typically with like really light oysters, like Pathfinder in the summer
golds.
or golds.
Golds are super, super light. And a 6-pound case will look
It'll look stuffed.
enormous.
Yeah. And that's why I like it, because I don't want to sell by water weight, so we sell by volume, because I want people to get as much fungal mass as possible, not as much water. And usually when you explain it to chefs, like, oh, you really want me to sell you $8 a pound water? Sounds great. The night before I come give you your mushrooms, I'm going to turn my humidifier on full, and I'll get $8. I'll get all that water in there, and I'll charge you $8 a pound.
We've seen that happen so many times.
So many times.
It's awful. It's a horrible practice as far as I'm concerned.
I don't like it, yeah. And then a lot of times people are spraying bleach on their mushrooms to keep the bacteria down because they've got them so sopping wet.
Yep.
It's just crazy. Special shiitake and kings are usually sold at about $100 a case.
And the kings will be
It'll be
almost like 13 pounds, 14 pounds.
Yeah, they're almost always like way more than 10
But
pounds.
again, we're selling by volume, so...
And we typically grow that giant king that I like, which means that there's like 4 or 5 mushrooms, and it weighs like 12, 13 pounds. So now the others, like hericiums, we do for 120, and then any other, or chestnuts are 120, and black poplar is at 120, I think, but everything else is at 150 a case, and that's the way we do it. And then at farmers markets, what was it, Samantha? We just did $20 a pound everything, except for like wild stuff. But
I just basically the baskets by volume too. I would just
we didn't really weigh it out.
I'd make the baskets as beautiful as I could, and just handed them out, and enjoyed talking to everybody. And I mean that's not really what you want to do all the time. But I would weigh them out. It was kind of pointless, honestly, to weigh them out, because by the end of the day, they were so light.
Yeah, because they
It was
lose water
absurd.
sitting there.
Yeah, and then I also learned that I wouldn't make my entire table completely full, especially if I was put in a place in the market that was completely lit by the sun. Everything would just dehydrate. I would kind of keep things underneath the table and put a few clusters out that were nice, and then make the baskets up as I kind of went along. But I see all sorts of fancy setups that are beautiful and awesome now that, they're in the clamshells and they're gorgeous. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people doing things. What are you doing? Doing things that I didn't do back in the day.
I was doing beard sound effects. I'm getting bored.
Stop it. Okay.
Give me something to do. You can't see. This is what happens when you can't let me get bored. My hands aren't doing anything, Samantha. What can I do?
So can contamination be present in fully colonized blocks but not visible and affect yield of fruiting at all? Can contamination be present in fully colonized blocks but not visible and affect the yield of fruiting at all?
Yes. Next
You
question.
want to elaborate on that?
I mean, how?
Okay.
Yes, they can be visible. Yes, they can be. Yes, a block can be contaminated, and you cannot know it sometimes, and then your yield can be down. The only way to really find that out is to, I don't know, do side-by-side comparisons, really.
And then Jesse has asked, What are some different color myceliums you will see on the agar? Are they all generally white?
For what? Contaminates or for mycelium of different oysters?
The way I'm reading it, I guess the mycelium of different oysters, are they colored at all?
Pink will absolutely show pink on the dish. Gold doesn't.
Especially
Gold just
when
looks
it starts
white.
fruiting.
Yeah. Gold just kind of looks wispy and white. Gold can actually look a lot like cobweb mold. Turkey tail also has kind of a cobweb mold thing to it. Is that Aislinn?
Yeah.
Our daughter is calling, probably from the other room, or on her way home.
Goodness.
Oh no, she said we are home now. She's actually talking in the chat. So, what are we talking about? Oh, the colors. Oh my gosh, yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get my act together. The colors of the mycelium can be very, very different, but typically oysters are always going to be white. The pinks will show pink, but usually it'll be white mycelium, and then they color pink later. But like blue, you don't see a difference. Usually it's a change in like the mycelium structure, like wispy or rhizomorphic or tomatose, which I think is the cottony type. So you've got all of these different shapes and speeds at which they grow. But like shiitake will grow white and then turns a really dark brown on the plate. Dead man's fingers is pure white and really wispy, but grows across the plate in like 3 days and then turns black with lines running all through it, and then sends up these dead man's fingers. So there's a lot of stuff like that.
She said, "Love your shirt, Mom and Dad."
Yeah. And then Jessie said, "My daughter just texted me from the bus too." So, in fact, a lot of people are saying the kids are home by y'all, so that's probably a good place to end it. Then, Joe Campbell says, "Taurus, me too. ADHD like crazy. So many irons on the fire." That's me too. See, like I'm ADHD. I get bored easy. I need to be entertained. So, entertain me.
Do.
Real quick, also wondering about a negative pressure system and how that might be rigged for a basic newbie startup, please. So here's the thing. If you're doing like a Martha tent, take a fan, exhaust your air out a window, you now have a negative pressure Martha tent. That's kind of how it works. You remove air from an area, and that creates a negative pressure from when you're pulling air out. And then air just naturally flows through back in. Like if you pump water from a low spot somewhere else, water just naturally flows to that same spot.
Nice.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to end it there. I appreciate each and every one of you all. We've had a good, consistent group of people going this whole time. So thank you guys so much. I'm a little disappointed we did not get into as much contamination stuff as I wanted, but this seemed like everybody needed a good Q&A, so we'll just ran with it. We will do some other topics in the future. I will come back to contamination, but I am done with contamination for live streams for the moment. So, anybody who's on Patreon or Discord, let me know what you might want to do next week. We'll get on there. So, thank you guys so much. And as always, y'all, keep spawning culture. Oh, I'll let Samantha say it too.
Bye.